Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
I'm Tyler.
And today we have a super special guest. So excited to introduce this person here. Kenji López-Alt. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, how are you doing?
So good, so good. So Kenji, I'm gonna give you a little intro, right? You're this chef, this meat scientist is what I refer to you as, right? A cookbook author, probably one of the most influential voices in modern food science. So if you are a cooking fan and you have Wi-Fi, you've probably seen this guy here. And he's the author of The Food Lab and The Wok, and was a culinary director at Serious Eats. So a really just amazing food background. If you have ever seen any of his videos, you will know that he just really dives deep into the science of how things cook, how things work. He's got some amazing recipes, and we're truly honored to have you on the Meat Dudes podcast today, man.
Oh, I'm excited. You know, I've been meaning to come to Lady J I've lived in Seattle now for 6 years.
Nice.
And I've been meaning to come to Lady J for a long time, and I just never make it out to West Seattle often enough. So I'm happy to be here.
Good.
Thank you. Thanks for making it out on this gloomy morning here.
Spring in Seattle.
between winter and spring here. So I think, we're really excited to have you on because you talk a lot about meat and cooking steaks, and that's where I follow you. You talk about everything, of course, but I really love your content on how to cook steaks and what happens when you're cooking steaks. But we talk a lot about Wagyu. So the first thing I kind of wanted to ask you was, when you hear Wagyu in America today, what is your honest reaction?
Generally skepticism. It's like, if someone says something is Wagyu, it's like, my question is like, well, like, show it to me, show me the fat, because Wagyu can mean a lot of things now. There's not, it could be a crossbreed. It could be coming from the U.S. It can be imported from Japan. Like there's a lot of different things that Wagyu can mean. So there's not really any specificity to that other than that, there's some amount of Wagyu DNA in there, which doesn't necessarily mean anything for what the steak is actually going to be or what the meat's actually going to be.
Totally right.
Yeah, no, man, I get it, and that's one thing that we really harp on and are trying to close the gap a little bit on what Wagyu really is and what it means and what it means in America. Because there are crosses. There's F1 cross, 50% Wagyu, 50%, generally Angus. There's places out there that claim they have a Wagyu burger that maybe is 5% Wagyu.
Yeah.
Right? So the transparency.
There should be a rule.
Yes.
Right.
We're getting there. And it's a young industry too. We talk about that all the time.
Well, it's also that, Wagyu raised in the, Wagyu, it just means, Gyu just means beef in Japan. It's just like a Japanese cow, and they're genetically different from other Western breeds because Japan was isolated for so long. But more than just the genetics of it, the genetics do lead to sort of more unsaturated fat, different types of intramuscular fat, that kind of stuff. But I think more than that, it's that Japan is not really a grazing country. It's like a volcanic rock.
Yeah.
They grow a lot of rice, but there's not a lot of grasslands. And so in the U.S. in the U.S. food for cows is cheap.
Yeah,
it's free. In South America it's free because you have all this grassland. Whereas in Japan, when Wagyu's raised there, when cows are raised there, they're mostly eating grains, or grasses, or things like hay, like rice hay, things like that, and so it's like they spend their entire lives eating this stuff as opposed to grazing on grasslands, and so they build up that fat in a different way than American cattle that is mostly going to be raised on grass, maybe finished with some grains or supplemented with grains.
Before the Japanese knew what they had, they were working cattle.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and it was, I think, sometime in the early 90s, I think that, it was a NATO deal that allowed imported cattle, imported beef into Japan for the first time, like in the 90s, and then suddenly it was like, all these Japanese beef producers, it's like, well, how are we gonna compete with this American beef coming in, or all this, all this new beef coming in, and so. as often happens with Japanese food, the way they compete is they work at it to make it like a luxury item, as opposed to a commodity item, and that's sort of like the origins of modern Wagyu beef and why it's so fatty and all, sold as a luxury item.
Yes, no, exactly. Yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of space in Japan for roaming cattle here. So we kind of talk about American Wagyu, and what do you think of, like, what does the term American Wagyu mean to you?
Well, I mean, it ranges. When I was still cooking in restaurants, American Wagyu almost always meant just a crossbreed. Like there's some amount of Wagyu blood in there. People even called things Kobe beef when it wasn't anywhere near Kobe. But yeah, to me, American Wagyu generally is going to mean if they're marketing it as some kind of Wagyu, either full blood or part, that likely it's going to have more marbling than other types of beef, and Angus or something, which is not always the case. But if they're marketing it that way, then it's likely going to have some higher amount of fat in it, and that fat is most likely going to be like a softer, more unsaturated fat. But again, like it really varies a lot. It's a big country. There's a lot of farmers out there, and it's it can vary.
Yeah.
It's funny you should say that because we were judging at the American Wagyu Association Best Steak in America, and we had 18 entries, all full blood, and every one of them was different. And some of them, there were a couple, and I hate to say it, didn't really even look prime to me.
Oh, really?
But others, there were some others that were like off the chart. They were off the chart. Like we were doing the BMS scale, Japanese BMS scale, and not the scale that the USDA uses, choice, prime, whatever. And a couple of them were like 14 BMS, where 12 is kind of where it ends. It was insane.
It was insane.
Yeah,
like beyond A5.
Beyond.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
We were with a meat scientist, and he said, "I've never seen anything like this." It was just incredible.
And he had just come from Italy, where that is totally not.
Oh yeah.
Like there's
What's
very little
the
fat
cattle
structure,
over there?
right?
What was that one cattle that he was?
Piemontese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I just got back from judging that.
Yeah.
That was wild, man. Yeah, no, you're right. It is different, and to me, I think I want to say American Wagyu is Wagyu that's raised in the United States. Like I wish that was the clear term. That's what we're really pushing for, because a lot of people do think it's a crossbreed. We talk to a lot of ranchers, and they're like, "Oh, it's a 50-50 cross," and I'm like, "Okay." I mean, it's not settled yet, because it's just. But like you said, some people will say Kobe beef, when referring to Wagyu, and so there's so many misconceptions, and people just don't really understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the problems is that Wagyu calves are so expensive. That there's because Wagyu cattle are generally either castrated or they're going to be non-reproducing, and Japan's a small country again, so there's not enough Wagyu calves to be able to do it at a reasonable price, which is why it's always a luxury. But
and it takes longer to raise them, so it's more expensive for the ranchers.
Yeah, right.
Takes longer. Yeah, more feed, everything. Gosh, that's true though. So, do you think that the normal, people like a normal American really understands Wagyu, or do you think that a lot of them just kind of think it's maybe just really expensive beef? What do you think they think of?
I mean, the average person probably doesn't get nerd out about it, and maybe they've seen it it's at Costco these days, imported, A5. So maybe they see that and see all the fat and I think it's common enough in sort of the zeitgeist now that people have a vague idea of what it is, but probably not the details of what it is. But I think people think Wagyu and they think, oh, like beef butter, or something like that. But there's like a Key and Peele sketch about it from years ago. That it's a well-known enough term that I think people have a sort of very base level understanding.
I think I saw that yesterday.
Wow.
It's where he shows up with the burgers at the barbecue.
Up with burgers, and then he's like, no, you can't put ketchup on that. Like, no, no one's having a double. And then at the end, he just He's like, no, you guys aren't worthy of this. And
takes it.
steals them all and then steals someone's dog and jumps over a fence.
See, that's what I hate about it. Like, I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be approachable for everyone because there's so many different types, and there's the F1 cross all the way up to the full bloods and everything in between.
Yeah. I mean, I think people also think expensive, right? Which it is.
It is a little bit more expensive.
But it's also like, you know, people are familiar with thinking like, okay, like a 12-ounce steak or a 16-ounce steak, right? And that's like, if I'm gonna have a steak, I'm gonna have a big one, you know.
America.
Whereas with Wagyu and really fatty things, like generally you're not gonna want to eat that much.
Yeah,
totally.
You know, like 4 ounces, anyway, like 3 to 5 ounces is probably a reasonable portion.
Yeah.
Even a large portion if you're eating a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And so so the cost per portion is not as high. The cost per ounce is a lot higher, but the cost per portion is going to be relatively reasonable.
Totally.
That's a great point. That's a great, and that's another good thing that we always talk about is like all the different cuts on the cow, because people think about ribeyes, New York's tenderloins, and with Wagyu,
there's so many more stakeable items.
Right?
Because of the intermuscular fat.
And look at a Wagyu top sirloin. You're like, you know, some people wouldn't like a meat snob wouldn't buy a prime top sirloin. Like, oh, it doesn't look good enough. You look at a Wagyu top sirloin, it's totally different.
Yeah,
totally different. Same with the ranch steak. I mean, these ranch steaks, we go crazy for these ranch steaks.
So good.
We used to sell them in our butcher shop for like $10, $11,
Yep.
and they looked like the most crazy marbled piece of meat.
Where does the ranch steak come from?
Shoulder club.
Yeah, it's like
shoulder club.
It's like the tricep, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a fun one.
And Zabs.
And
we sold
we
tons
talked
of
about
Zabatons.
Zabatons.
Tons of Zabatons.
Gosh.
Actually, I have 3 out back right now that we're sending to the boys down in Peoria.
Okay.
The old Mariners, huh? Well, you know, let's get into your expertise here, which is a lot of it is cooking, of course.
Okay.
So, from a cooking standpoint, what do you think Wagyu actually does different? How does it cook differently than conventional beef?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things. Like, you know, first of all, obviously it's fattier, and fat is an insulator, and so heat will tend to travel through it a little more slowly. But on the other hand, you know, Wagyu fat is also higher in unsaturated fats. You know, and so when you're talking about fat saturation, there's like a fat molecule kind of looks like the letter E. You know, there's a backbone, and then there's 3 fatty acid chains that come off of it. And when those fatty acid chains are saturated, they're kind of stiff, and so you get this kind of stiff E, and then and so it can lock into each other more easily, and that's why saturated fat is really solid,
like hard.
Yeah. Whereas unsaturated fats or monounsaturated fats have like kind of kinks in the branches of the E sticking out, and so they don't stack as well, and so monounsaturated, unsaturated fats tend to be softer. And so, so while a fully beef fat, most beef fat will melt at maybe like 40 degrees Celsius, like Wagyu beef fat can melt at like half that, like 20 or 30 degrees. So like, basically body temperature.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things with cooking a steak, like a non-Wagyu steak, a regular old steak, is that if it gets too fatty, and if it gets too fatty and it's not hot enough, the fat like has an almost kind of like waxy thing, because it gets into your mouth, it cools down, and then it solidifies or thickens up, and so you get this kind of waxy thing. Whereas with Wagyu, whether you cook it well done or even if you eat a slice of it raw, it's going to melt on your tongue. So, with Wagyu, I'd say, the general rule that like the fattier the steak, the more, the hotter you should cook it doesn't necessarily apply.
Yeah.
And for me, the goal is really just to, get that center heated up to the point where it's just soft enough, right?
Okay.
But not kind of like melting out, right? You don't want like a gusher. I think like you want like something that's going to slowly melt in your mouth.
Yeah.
And then and then browning properly is obviously good. The other thing is that you don't need extra fat to cook a Wagyu.
Do not.
It's going to cook in its own fat, and because of that, you're going to get more intense flavors because you're not going to be diluting it with with oil or butter. It's like cooked in its own fat. It's going to be really strongly flavored. And as far as eating, it's that the fact that the fat is less saturated means that it's going to be more tender. That's part of what gives it that kind of buttery texture.
Yep.
And when there's a ton of intramuscular fat, like fat, the marbling that works its way into the muscles, like it means that the muscle chains are also shorter. So you have less of these sort of big blocks of muscle, which means that it's going to be more tender, no matter what. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember where we started, but that's my.
We can get nerdy.
I love that.
How fat melts and intramuscular fat content is going to be totally different. It reacts completely different than American beef.
Yeah. So when you're talking about Wagyu, when you're describing that example, were you in your head? Were you thinking more of A5 or more of like?
I was thinking more A5. Yeah. Something with like that's really high in marbling.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Because that cooks, that cooks a lot different than than an F1 cross. Ribeye that is going to be maybe slightly higher than prime, but still, as you said, still going to cook, a little bit faster. Fat is an insulator. It's going to have a lot more fat than your choice or prime ribeye. So, yeah, I could see that. I could see that too. Gosh.
We get pretty nerdy about the nutritional aspects too.
Okay.
Of the omegas and oleic acids and how this beef is actually heart healthy beef,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a nutritionist, but I do know that generally the high oleic acid content is better for you fat wise than than other types of beef fat. I think the main health thing that people might be concerned about is just like the really high caloric density. It's like there's so much fat in there, so it's really, really calorie heavy. Because I think fat is like more than 4 times the amount of calories per gram than protein. But again, you're not eating nobody's eating like a 16-ounce. Or very few people are eating a 16-ounce Wagyu steak.
No. I wouldn't even try.
No.
I cooked up probably like a 16-ounce full-blood ribeye.
It's too much.
I was like, I can't eat this. Like this, I can't even eat this. Like
I mean, even a 16-ounce prime ribeye is
a lot.
It's a lot. It's dedication. Yeah.
You gotta be able to share that.
What was the Great Outdoors when John Candy does like the old
69
or whatever,
old 76 or whatever it is.
76er.
Yeah.
It's a
Is that what it is, Jim? 76. Yeah.
We got to do that, man.
And then he has to eat the fat afterwards.
Yeah.
Imagine though the Wagyu 76.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Too much.
We talk a lot about the health benefits, but I do like, we were talking to Desi Sakali, who's a meat scientist. She tests tons and tons of steaks, Wagyu steaks all over, and has her own competition, the Triple Crown Steak Challenge. And she says, while it is healthier, it is more like a salmon and olive oil fat, but it is not as healthy as a salmon or an olive oil.
Right.
And I like that because I was like, I don't want to get too crazy by saying having people just go out there and thinking that they can eat a whole piece of A5 and be a health
beef every day.
Yeah. Everything in moderation, but I respect that fact of yes, it is healthier. It is a good beef, and it also we talk a lot about just health benefits as far as knowing where your beef comes from. I know it's well raised, and a lot of people will argue, say my mom, she wants me to eat Mediterranean, right? She wants me to eat chicken and fish. And I'm like, well, that's great. But when I go to the grocery store, the chicken that is available there is really not that great. And I'm eating beef that is, 180 miles away from our location right here. I know it's well raised. It's birth to harvest. It's finished on local barley, pasture raised. And to me, that is a lot healthier in my eyes than eating some, grocery store chicken.
It's true.
Yeah.
Let's not get carried away on
I know.
chicken.
I don't want to go too much on chicken, man. We get a little crazy sometimes, man. Gosh. What was the last Wagyu steak that you cooked? Do you remember?
That I cooked? You know what I did recently? So I was down in Oaxaca over the New Year. And I went to this restaurant called La Boveda, which is on a small restaurant on the coast. And the chef there, he made this carne asada taco, but the way he did it was he had Wagyu ribeye that he shaved the way you would for a cheesesteak, and then essentially made a pile of it and just seared it without moving it in the pan. So it got this like crazy crust on it, and and then put the tortilla on top and kind of flipped it over. So crazy crust on it, but still kind of there's still like sort of medium rare bits on top of it. And I thought it was like one of the coolest things I'd eaten, and I was like, oh man, people should just like why does nobody make a cheesesteak this way?
It's a shame.
And so actually the last Wagyu I cooked was. Just a few days ago, I had some shaved Wagyu chuck roll, A5 chuck roll.
Oh yeah.
That was
A5.
Yeah. Ooh. That was meant for shabu shabu. I got it at Asian Family Mart, I think. And so I did that, but as a cheesesteak. So I made like a kind of a hoagie sized. Slightly compressed pile of it, and then just put it on a griddle and let it sear until that one side got crispy. And then I did also an onion thinly shaved on it, so I flipped it over and then let it kind of warm through while the onion sizzled, and put that into a cheesesteak, and it was really good.
That's awesome.
What kind of cheese did you put on it?
This was white American.
Okay. Okay. Dude, classic, man.
I'm down.
How did that A5 chuck roll look like visually? Did it look like
crazy marbled? There was tons of intramuscular fat. It's chuck roll, so there's also some sort of bigger pieces of intermuscular fat. Like bigger sort of swaths of fat. But it looked fatty. It tasted fatty. I ate some of it raw. When you're doing shabu shabu, you're like kind of dipping it in and bringing it out, so you're really just kind of warming it up to melt that fat. But with the A5, it's like I ate like a couple slices raw just to taste it, and it's just melts in your mouth. Melts like
second hit your tongue.
It always freaks my wife out when I do that.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I love it.
It's fine. It's fine, honey. I know. It's crazy because when we think A5, we think of a lot of times what you see over here is like ribeyes in New York's.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, what happens to the rest of the cow? Is there like A5 ground beef? There can't be, right? Like, what do they do with the back end? Like
it would be pate.
Like
it'd be tough. You'd have to be grinding like in a freezer, I think.
Is it just like, is it like they sell like probably the tenderloins in New York's and ribeyes, and then the rest is just shabu shabu? They're like, we probably get some shabu shabu out of like this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I've seen like a whole chuck roll. I've seen it sliced, but yeah.
You ever seen an A5 tri-tip?
I don't think have I? I might have, but no.
I follow this butcher on Instagram. It's a Capital Meat Imports, I think.
Yeah.
And he's always doing cutting demos and stuff. And he did a tri-tip the other day, A5 tri-tip. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Looked white.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
There's like no muscle structure.
How would you cook an A5 tri-tip?
Dude, like super, super, super low heat, reverse sear, I guess.
Yeah. In a pan.
Yeah.
In a pan,
Yeah.
That's the fat,
Somebody talked about smoking an A5 brisket. And they said they did it on like a sheet pan, and the fat was just like melting over the sheet pan.
Yeah.
Smoking smoking like low and slow. They're doing like real barbecue or like either smoking or braising or anything like that. That all seems you're getting way beyond the temperature that the fat's going to be holding. So
for sure.
I'm sure you get still shorter muscle fibers and it stays juicier, but that almost feels like a waste. I don't know. I've never tried it, so I don't know.
It almost sounds impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But really, sous vide,
we hear a lot of the sous vide.
Probably be a technique for something like an A5 tri-tip.
Yeah, sous vide, reverse sear. And anything that'll get you to, it's a big cut, so anything that'll allow you to kind of really evenly cook it through, because what you don't want is to by the time the middle's done, all the fat is already drained out of the rest.
It's gone.
It's starting to fire somewhere. Yes, talking about intramuscular fat distribution, a lot of times what we're looking for, like on a nice steak, is that kind of snowflake, spider web versus that big chunk of fat. You know,
right?
How does that cook differently in your eyes? Like you had a spider web steak versus like a steak that had big, large chunks of fat inside of it. How do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's like intramuscular versus intermuscular fat, yeah, I mean, intramuscular, the snowflake, the spiderweb stuff, that's the stuff that is actually going to like physically shorten your muscle protein, your protein networks, and make it more tender.
Yeah.
You can still get flavor from the other kind of fat, because when we eat something. The fat is almost like the fat is almost like the train that it's like the flavor train.
Yeah.
It's like fat doesn't necessarily have. I mean, fat does have flavor on its own, but fat is really good at distributing flavor and bringing it to different parts of your mouth. And so when you have something with high fat, it's not enough just to have high fat. You also you need like good browning. You need you need to season it properly. And the fat will help take that flavor to your mouth. And so you get that whether it's intramuscular or these sort of bigger chunks of fat, as long as they're kind of melting and coating the bites as you're eating them. But the marbling on the inside, the snowflake stuff is really going to contribute a lot. I mean, a ton to tenderness, and like that's why you get that kind of really
silky mouth,
silky, buttery, and then there's a high, a large amount. Usually, if you're getting that spider webbing, that snowflake, it means that you probably have a much higher ratio of fat to meat than when they're just kind of in big chunks.
And doesn't like if you have a spider webby steak, the fat's gonna melt kind of more evenly in that.
Oh,
steak
sure,
and
yeah,
distribute that flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's really kind of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, gosh.
I just cooked 100 Wagyu steaks from how many different
eight ranches,
eight different ranches
all over the U.S. Yeah,
and they're everything from cowboy ribeyes to zabs to there was some culottes in there. A bunch of different stuff, lots of ribeyes,
lots of different sizes.
Every one of the ranches product cooked differently.
Yeah,
and it was weird because I had an induction pan.
Yeah,
couldn't
so
have
same
any
temperature.
Same temperature, and the very last one, they were beautiful ribeyes. They had like 12 of them.
I just like inch thick,
but they were like perfect size, so I could get 2 in the pan. And they cooked completely differently than everything else I had just cooked. And I had to crank the pan up to like another 100 degrees just to get the real sear on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Still kind of boggles my mind. I'm just like, I don't know why. Why is this happening?
That seems like part of why people are afraid to cook. I mean, they just spent hundreds of bucks on meat for a few people, and then it cooks a little. It's going to cook differently from everything else you've cooked, and most people don't cook 100 steaks in a day.
This is true.
And they maybe cook steaks a few times a year, or maybe once or twice a month, and so they might not have that. That reaction to seeing it, being like, oh shit, like I need to pump up the heat. Right. I need to lower it. I need to do this.
That the last ribeyes, like just hitting the pan, and they were cold. I could watch like all the intermuscular was just like melting that, and I was like, "Whoa, geez, this is like A5 or something." It's like it went so fast, but made it through.
We made it. And speaking of marbling, this is a question we kind of always talk about. Topic we always talk about is at some point, is there like a diminishing returns when it comes to marbling? Is there too much marbling, especially for the American palate? And the consumer, like, you know what? This F1 crust, this purebred, which is 93.75% Wagyu. This is really good. You start getting up to the full blood and the A5, and they're great. Don't get me wrong, we love it. But does it get to be too much for some people?
I mean, I think it's. I don't think it has to. You have to commit to one side or the other. Sometimes you're in the mood for more, and sometimes it's like my ex-wife is Colombian, and I would go down to Colombia like maybe twice a year for a dozen years or so. And one of the first things I did when I would get down there is go to this steakhouse that I always went to, and they had and they would have Colombian excuse me, they would have Colombian beef, which is all grazed, very like not much intramuscular fat at all. But it was always like fun to go there and taste it and eat it because it's so different from what we're used to up here. So you know, for me it's like variety. It's like sometimes I'm in the mood for a dry aged prime ribeye, and sometimes I'm in the mood for really highly marbled, a few ounces of really highly marbled A5. But
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a point of diminishing returns because you do, the more fat there is, sort of the easier it's going to melt and the more tender it's going to be, especially if it's this, high unsaturated, if it's the relatively unsaturated fat in a Wagyu. But again, it's like fat on its own is generally not enough to sort of give a ton of flavor. Like you need a combination of fat and protein, properly seasoned, properly browned, in order to, I think, get the best tasting result. It's like if fat is like the train, you still need the passengers to get on board.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And, talking about Wagyu, it is a spectrum. And so, like you said, sometimes you're in the mood for A5, sometimes you're in for full blood, purebred, F1 cross. And, you have that spectrum, but you also have where it's raised and how it's raised and what it's fed. And one of the greatest things I always talk to our buddy Andrew Shirley out of River Valley Wagyu down in Olympia, and he raises 100% full blood grass-fed Wagyu. And it's awesome. And he always talks about how, it's just for a different day of the week. And, it's not for, you don't have to eat it every day, but some days you're in the mood for a prime ribeye and a full blood ribeye, and then some days you're in the mood for a full blood grass fed. It just it tastes different. There's so many different nuances when it comes to beef. So, when we were talking about,
it's like wine.
It's like wine, absolutely. And that's man, we started saying that all the time. Wine from Australia is different from wine from California because of the different terroirs. There's terroir in beef.
I think more for most people probably more recognizable than the terroir in wine.
You're probably right. Yeah. So let's get into just a smidge about grass-fed and grain-finished. I'm trying to say grass-fed versus grain-finished because all cows are raised on grass.
Yeah.
A lot of them are grain-finished, depending on where they're at in their region. Do they cook differently? When you're cooking a grass-fed versus maybe a grain-fed, grain-finished cow, how differently do they cook? Do you notice anything?
I mean, a lot of it comes down to, again, like sort of what the grading is and how much fat is in there. And so generally grain finished cattle are going to have more fat, and the fat's going to be more highly saturated. And so, my general rule when we're not talking about just Wagyu necessarily, but just beef in general, for me, it's like the fattier the cut I want, the higher the temperature I want to cook it to. So if I'm eating a tenderloin with virtually no fat, like I don't want to overcook it at all because it's going to get dry, it'll turn kind of chalky. And so a tenderloin a tenderloin, I would order it rare. Yeah. Whereas if I'm getting like a really fatty ribeye, I want it more at medium. 130,
Totally.
125, 130, like a little, hotter.
Yeah.
Medium. Yeah. Medium maybe on the rarer side of medium. But if it's like really fatty, then like I'm fine letting it go even higher.
Yeah.
So that fat really kind of melts. With Wagyu, I would personally like it a little less cooked just so I don't lose that fat, so that because the fat's going to be softer anyway, and so like a Wagyu at 120 will probably have sort of a similar texture to like a prime grain finished steak at like 130, just because the fat melts at a lower temperature.
Really? Okay. Wow, that's good. 120. All right. We usually go to about 130 when we're cooking. When we're cooking that way. At least a 125 to 130.
And that's mostly just for the general consumer, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And when you're cooking a 125 or 130, are you doing are you doing like high heat the whole time, or are you doing like a sous vide or a reverse sear?
Usually back when we were doing whole muscles, it was slow smoke, 225. Slow,
I would say if you're gonna go really slow, then Yeah, that, I mean, because you know, if I'm doing it, it'll be on a griddle or in a pan, hot. I mean, at home sometimes I sous vide, sometimes I reverse sear, but most of the time I'm just cooking fast. And so that's 120 when I pull it, so it probably ends up around 125, 130.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that, man. Yeah, when I'm cooking a steak, I'm usually going, like you've taught me, high heat when it starts, and then I kind of turn it down a little bit after that to like a medium, you know, and then finish to about 125 and let it carry.
Yeah. And it depends on the thickness too, you know. So
absolutely.
It's like, the thicker the steak, the lower the heat you want to use. So that.
Yeah, God, they gave us a cowboy steak at that convention at CattleCon.
One pan,
Huge
and
cowboy steak.
there was like 1.5 inch thick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is gonna take forever.
Yeah.
I don't know why you guys are sitting here waiting to taste this.
All these people just
not
staring.
gonna be very quick.
We're like, this might take a while, actually, man. So, when you're talking to a home cook, what are some things that a lot of people? Let me start with this. Whenever we're selling beef out of our butcher shop, people would come in and say, "I'm scared to cook this. I'm scared to cook Wagyu. I don't want to screw it up." What are some quick tips you can tell people when they buy a Wagyu steak, whether it be an F1 cross, a full blood, or even A5? How should they cook it? What are some things that they should look for or listen for when it hits the pan?
Well, I mean, the first thing is don't put it on the grill.
Don't grill it. Don't
say
grill
that
it
all the time, dude. I know.
Because it'll just end up with a big fireball. You know, I mean, the first thing I would tell people is that, you know, actually Wagyu is probably more forgiving than any other beef you're going to get. So there's a much wider range of temperatures at which it's going to still taste great. So if it's slightly undercooked, it's slightly overcooked, it's still going to taste amazing because it'll stay tender, it'll stay juicy, even if you accidentally overcook it. So you know, I think really what you're looking for is minimal seasoning so that you can taste the meat. So even just salt, maybe salt a little, and a little pepper if you want pepper, but
just
I think just salt. Yeah.
What kind of salt?
Kosher salt. I mean, something you can sprinkle evenly.
Diamond crystal.
Yeah, diamond crystal or more, whatever, you know. But something you can sprinkle evenly and get it on there. You know, you can use any kind of pan, but generally you want something kind of heavy that's gonna hold heat. It can be stainless, it could be cast iron. But you know, I think one difficult thing for people is gauging pan temperature. So you know, I think if you do, you don't need to add fat, but you know, it is sometimes useful, I find, to just get like a paper towel, rub a little fat in the pan so that it acts as sort of like a temperature gauge for you. Okay. You know, so that you know, okay, if I'm seeing like faint wisps of smoke here, then it's like the pan's at like 375.
Ready
if
to go.
Smoking heavily, it's at like 450. You know. And so I would say, rub in like a very, very thin layer of oil, just enough that it'll give you an indication of the pan temperature. And then when it's starting to very lightly smoke, then I think that's when you put in your steak. And you want to hear it. You want to hear it sizzle. You want to hear the fat rendering right from the start, and you want to get good browning. But you know, depending on the thickness of the steak, you're going to want to change the temperature. So a thicker steak, you can start with that hot pan, get a little browning, but then bring the temperature down, so that you don't overcook the outside before you cook through to the middle. But a thinner steak, you can keep the heat up the whole time. And especially for home cooks, I would say use a good thermometer.
No shame.
You know, that whole a line cook who's cooking, you know, the same product all the time or has experience with a few different types of steak and is cooking dozens of them a night. Like, they can tell by touch, they can tell by their senses whether it's done or not. But if you're only cooking a couple steaks a month or a couple steaks a year, like, that's a real hard skill to pick up. And like, you know, that advice of like, you know, like, oh, like your chin is like, your chin is well done and your cheek is rare. I mean, if you poke like your partner's cheek, it feels real different from your cheek, you know. So there's no.
That's so different. I I know.
So it's like who has the medium rare cheek, but I would say
I wonder what mine is.
rely on a thermometer.
Yeah.
To tell when it's done.
Oh yeah. Do you have that touch? Can you do it, or do you use? I use a thermometer because I want to make sure it's perfect. But
I use a thermometer virtually every time I cook. Sometimes if I'm like camping or hunting, or I'm at some place where I don't have access, then you can figure it out. But also it's like if you're real worried, just cut it open and peek. It's like a steak is not like a water balloon, right? It's not just like you poke it and then suddenly like all the juice is gone.
No, dude. I was at Little J, our bakery down in South Park, and I was making myself a smash witch, and I was cooking the egg and I was cooking the sausage, and I look at our chef and I go, "Chef, is this sausage done?" And he's like, "Are you gonna eat it?" I was like, "Yeah." And he just cuts it in half, and he's like, "Yeah, it's done." I was like, "All right, well, you know what? I guess that works too."
That's easy.
Yeah, dude, that was pretty easy. No, it's true though. Yeah.
Back in the early culinary days, it was this test,
yeah.
And then
I know, I never.
when you clench your fist,
Yeah.
I know, but once again, everybody's
hands is different.
It doesn't
You
work.
get some big line cooks out there, probably got a little more meat on their hands.
Big old paw.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit.
It doesn't work that way.
No, yeah, I'm glad you said that Wagyu is forgiving because I think people need to hear that. They don't realize that it's great from medium rare to medium well. And if as long as you get that crust on there, I think you're gonna have a great steak.
Yeah, I mean it's not like people's tenderloin's expensive, and people spend a lot of money on tenderloin, and tenderloin is I think the most unforgiving steak cut.
Oh yeah.
Because there's generally so little marbling in there. It's like just overcooking it a little bit, it's going to make it dry. And people still spend a lot of money on tenderloin at the holidays.
They do.
And it's like, the chances of screwing up a tenderloin are much higher than the chance of screwing up any kind of.
True enough.
Yeah.
What's your favorite steak?
Ooh.
Just favorite steak in general.
Period.
Like a good dry-aged bone-in ribeye.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
I'm a ribeye guy myself.
Kevin of Beast and Cleaver just posted a really nice bone-in Wagyu dry-aged ribeye today.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, dang, bro.
I'll text him and ask him to throw it in the freezer for me.
Yeah, dude.
Get out.
Oh, dude. Okay. That guy does some good work.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite Wagyu? If you had to pick a Wagyu steak from an F1 Cross, New York to an A5 ribeye, in between.
I mean, honestly, for me, if I'm gonna get a Wagyu, it's generally because I want that real high fat,
ultra marble.
Yeah, like so it would be probably an A5.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to be going for it, then I'm gonna go all in.
You going big?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I understand it. What about you, Chef? What are you picking these days?
Well, we just met with that butcher last week, and we were talking about the entire animal. He broke it down.
He broke it down, hanging all the way down.
Yep.
It was
And
wild.
I really have a hankering for some hanger steak. After that conversation, I love hanger steak.
Yeah, really.
I like hanger. I love skirt also.
I know.
Same.
Yeah, skirt's getting more expensive though.
Oh, yeah,
It's
all
to
getting
creep.
more expensive.
I know.
It's nuts.
I also think actually like one of the most underrated cuts for steak is short rib. Like we normally think of short rib as just like a braising cut, but I mean, unless you're eating like Korean barbecue, but a really nice, when you get one of those short ribs with a real nice, inch thick or a couple inch thick cap, it's extremely well marbled. It can be tough. But you cook it medium rare or to medium, and then you slice it really thin.
Super
and I think
thin.
the flavor is just like the flavor of short rib cooked as a steak. I think is outstanding.
Cooked as a steak.
Same.
Oh,
I like that.
wow. Yeah, is that the same cut as the flanken rib?
Flanken is just the way it's cut. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like the English style, it's like you get one bone and the
Yeah.
meat that's stuck on top of it. Whereas flanken, you're slicing
it
through
down.
the bones and you're getting and so flanken it will be cutting sort of against the grain.
Yeah.
And that's why it grills so easily or does well in like Korean barbecue. Whereas English cuts are with the grain.
Yeah.
But an English cut short rib cooked like a steak and then sliced really thin against the grain. I think it's
Yummo.
Yeah, it's great.
Yummo.
That's a good one. That'd be a good one for the meat box too.
So I got to go talk about that today. Okay.
That is awesome, man. Well, how about we maybe we cook up a couple of Wagyu burgers real quick and then continue the conversation. Take a little break. Is that okay?
Cool.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it, guys. All right, picking it back up here. How was that burger? How's that?
Well, we're almost done with
Wagyu burger.
They're great.
Yeah. Chef Tyler just made us a few Wagyu burgers to get us through here.
Single, double.
I went with the dub, of course. And you know me, I like all that monounsaturated healthy fats. Right. No, man, that's good. Well, Kenji, in your eyes, what makes a great burger?
I mean, for me, it's like keeping it simple, generally. Getting a good sear is the important part.
Crust.
Getting the crust on it, getting that brown beef flavor. I don't like when people put stuff into the meat. You know, like to me, it always tastes like a meatloaf sandwich.
Like a Juicy Lucy.
Why do people do that?
Yeah, Juicy Lucy. A Juicy Lucy is fun, but also like, I don't know, pointless. I'd rather have but if you're getting it hot enough to melt all that American cheese in the center of a kind of thicker patty, then you're gonna. I guess I don't think it's any better than just having the cheese on top.
Same.
Keeping it simple, and for me, it's like, about sort of maximizing that beef flavor. Yeah. And these days I tend to prefer a smaller burger. You know, I think this is 3 ounces, you said, and that's like good size for me. And these are cooked like. They're cooked well done, and I think that's fine when you have nice fatty meat, and then especially because the American cheese kind of ties everything together.
Creamy, yeah.
But yeah, keeping it simple and,
A little bit of mayo.
not overwhelming, and just working on developing that brown flavor, that crust on it.
So let's talk about the crust, because we had a lot of people who cook steaks. We got a lot of ranchers too that want to learn how to cook steaks better. So. Let's talk about the Maillard effect and what happens when you actually put the steak into a hot pan and how the steak actually starts to cook.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing that's going to start happening is that you're going to melt some of the fat, and the fat's going to get, the fat essentially, if a steak is not perfectly flat on one side, and especially as it starts to cook, it might curl and buckle a little bit here and there. And so without fat, you get parts that are going to be sort of in direct contact with the pan, but some parts that also might be slightly lifted,
steamed.
Yeah, and so you don't end up with an even sear. So if you're cooking like an A5, something really fatty, you don't need to add extra fat to the pan. It's going to provide its own fat. But if you're cooking another type of steak, you probably want to you want enough fat in there that it acts as sort of a conductor between the pan and the meat. And then the Maillard reaction is. A very complex browning reaction where essentially you're breaking down proteins into smaller molecules and then recombining them into there's this cascade chemical reaction where you end up with hundreds of new flavor compounds that don't excuse me there's this cascade chemical reaction where you end up with hundreds of new flavor compounds that aren't in the raw meat, and that's why brown flavors give you that complexity, they give you the umami. Browning is important. And those reactions only take place above a certain temperature. Well, they start to take place relatively low temperatures, but they really get going once you're really nice and hot.
Yeah.
Which is why you want a hot pan.
And you got to push that meat down, right?
It depends on the steak, dude.
Yeah.
It depends on the steak. So I like what you said, because a lot of people don't understand that say in New York, for instance, there's a nerve end more towards the rear of the New York, which it almost acts like a crispy skinned bass or something, right? You have to sit there and babysit it quite a while to get that crust all the way through, or else it's going to cup, and the outside's going to get your caramelization, and then you have domes all steamed, right? So I took how many spatulas? With me down there to cook all those steaks, but press and press.
Open up your those knives.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I press steaks. There are certain ones that won't have any of that muscle structure that will actually tighten and bind. Funny enough, the flat iron will do that, but a zabuton or a Denver steak will not. And those are exactly...
Bow or bow?
Nope, it's just in the pan, forget about it. Yeah. And what's funny about that is they're both in generally the exact same area of that chuck roll, right? Just has to do with fiber and tissue, and you just have to do it by experience and learn what steaks do that and what don't, you know?
I'm also, personally, I'm also a steak mover. Like like when because you have heard the advice like put it in the pan and then don't touch it. I find especially at home when maybe you're just using a regular home burner, that what happens then, like if you put the meat down, you're wasting all this energy because like the rest of the pan is really hot. Where you just put the meat down, the meat's gonna suck up that heat. And so you end up with a cooler spot there. And so actually by kind of every once in a while sliding the steak around, you even out the heat of the pan, you get more of that energy going into the meat. So that's
a good point.
It's easier to get a crust. Flipping it repeatedly is also like totally fine to do.
Totally.
I think the advice to only flip a steak once likely comes from, it's like people, if you're working like the grill station at a steakhouse, and you have like 20 steaks fired, it takes a lot of effort to actually go and flip them all. So it's like, okay, like if I'm going to come up with a method that works for this situation, right? Like I'm working at a steakhouse, flipping it once works. It lets me keep track of when it went on. It lets me keep track of where each steak is. But most home cooks aren't cooking that way. They're cooking maybe 4 steaks, maybe 6 steaks at a time. So it's a lot. It's a lot. They have the luxury of being able to flip it over and over. So depending on what situation you're in, you have sort of different parameters for what is the best cooking method. But yeah, flipping a steak repeatedly, like even as much as like every 15 seconds, will help it actually cook more evenly.
Distribute the heat, right?
Yeah, it distributes the heat more evenly, so you get more of an even cook up from edge to center, and it's fun.
That's a good point too for the grillers out there, because exact same thing. You got to move and find all the hot spots on the grill, and when you put your steaks down, that part's gonna get cold. If you're nerdy enough and you don't want to mess up the cross hatches, you just slide them so you keep the lines straight.
That's the one. That's what I was thinking about, the cross hatches.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather have a steak that's well browned all over than because if you're seeing those real distinct cross hatches, then like by definition, like parts of the hatches, those parts taste great, but then by definition, like the parts in between them are not as browned as well. Not browned as well.
Yeah. Whenever I'm grilling, I'm usually grilling on a cast iron. I have a cast iron out there too, and then I might maybe finish it over some live fire.
Just so you get a little bit of that
singed
fat flavor.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm more of a let's cook it evenly, perfect every time.
Evan's learned a lot.
I've cooked a lot of steaks in the last couple of years. A lot of Wagyu steaks. Screwed up a lot of steaks.
Back when we first met, his favorite steak was steak bites.
Oh, I love steak bites, man. That was 2013. That was 2013.
Now what's your favorite steak?
Now my favorite steak, I mean, I would definitely throw out the zabuton for sure. That's one of my favorites. I really love like a nice maybe F1 cross.
You're in New
bavette.
York. About that?
Yeah, I like the bavette. I like New York's more than ribeyes.
Oh, really?
Too. Yeah, I do. I just feel like I like a little bit more of that meat, a little bit more of that chew. But I'm not gonna kick a ribeye out of bed or anything like that. But yeah, if I'm ordering from like a steakhouse, I'll usually go New York. Yeah, I usually go New York. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I like the I like the bits you can chew off the bone on a ribeye.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Although, like usually, especially these days, like usually by the time I'm done with the ribeye, I'm like, I can't handle the bone anymore. Yeah.
In your mind, does the bone add flavor? What do you feel about the bone?
I mean, meat. It doesn't really add flavor. However, the bone, you're going to have a higher concentration of connective tissue, higher concentration of fat around there. Yep. So the bone itself doesn't add flavor, but the meat around the bone will have more flavor in general.
Good
and
bits,
and when you're if you're doing like a prime rib, like roasting doing a whole roast, the bones, rather than flavor, they're really more adding kind of insulation, and sort of making the cooking a little more even. And so the meat right next to the bone is going to be a little bit less cooked, so it'll probably taste a little better. But it's not like, again, like a meat is not like a water balloon. There's not just like juices flowing back and forth whatever way they please inside there.
Yeah. Although you must let your steak rest.
Oh, yes.
There's debate on that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What's the debate on that?
Oh, I mean, like people like AP, like Adam Perry Lang says, don't let your steaks rest. There's a lot of people who say don't let your steak rest. Meathead, Meathead, he's written a couple of books. Kind of a barbecue guru guy. He doesn't rest his steaks.
I'm gonna have to do some more research.
People really like that. I guess their argument is like getting that crackling, sizzling, really hot crust is like an essential part of it. I think even Chris Young, who's local here, he doesn't.
Chris doesn't rest his steaks.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't. He came out saying not to rest your steaks, but whatever. My technique is to rest my steak, but then right before I serve it, I heat up the fat in the pan again, and then pour it over and just get it sizzling.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and that way you get that crust and you get rested meat.
Back in the fancy cooking days, we would, when I worked meat station, we would finish all our steaks, rest them, and then put butter on top and flash them in the salamander right before service. So you get that good warmth and crust again.
Yeah.
But I've just always been yelled at for years to rest your steak. So I'm gonna call my buddy Chris Young.
That's cool. No, I mean, I think what you do is maybe the best of both worlds because you want to rest it, but there are some times I will admit when I'm resting it and I'm like, okay, well, it's not as warm as I wanted it to be.
Right. Hot plate, that's important.
Yeah, that is important. That's another good tip out there, the hot plate. Because, you just throw it on a cold plate and it just brings the temperature down.
Yep.
Super quick.
So fast.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna.
Or the old Chili's fajita platter.
Yeah. Gosh. I love fajitas.
Don't get him started on Chili's.
Hey, so we're in Tennessee, and we're at this just like all these amazing places, and there's like Broadway, right? That's the main drag, and it's just like the most incredible fun bars and restaurants, and we're just so tired. We're like, we're going to Chili's next to the hotel. Oh man,
I don't even know what I ate.
Oh,
I can't even remember.
We're gonna put it on the menu. It was the
wings.
No, the chicken bacon ranch quesadilla.
Boy.
I was like, Tyler, can we get that on the menu?
Top shelf.
It was pretty. Hey man, I'll say it was pretty good. Well, let's do a little myth busting rapid fire if you got it in you here, because I think this was kind of fun. So a lot of people say these things, and I kind of want to hear your true or false to some of these. Okay, Wagyu is just fatty beef. True or false?
False. It's not just fatty beef. It's it's a specific breed, but more importantly, like for the cooking and the eating, like it's a different type of fat. Yes. It's a softer fat. It's a less saturated fat. So it's not just that there's more of it. It's that it's a specific type of fat that melts at a lower temperature.
False.
Love it. False.
False.
Yes. Okay. True or false? American Wagyu isn't real Wagyu.
That depends. Yeah, it depends what you define as real Wagyu. Yeah, it's not all 100% purebred Wagyu. Some of it is and some of it isn't. You gotta kind of check your sources on it.
Yeah, transparency is definitely key. It does have Wagyu genetics in there, though. That would be my argument, right?
Or it should.
It should. Yeah, that's why transparency. We need transparency, right? True or false? You need sous vide for Wagyu.
No, you don't need it. It's a good way to cook like a bigger piece. It's a good way to really sort of guarantee you're getting a consistent temperature reliably. But no, you don't need Wagyu. You don't need sous vide for anything. Unless you're doing like a 72-hour braise, 140 degree braise or whatever like that. Maybe you need sous vide for, but you don't need a sous vide. You don't need sous vide for a steak.
Don't need it. Good. True or false? More marbling always equals better flavor.
No, I mean, No, and our people's definition of flavor vary. It's a personal thing, right? So like, totally. Yeah, some people want that marbling, some people don't. Some people on one day want it, and some on another day. Like I sometimes want it, I sometimes don't, and it's not necessarily about like more flavor versus less flavor. It just eats differently. It's, and and a lot of with Wagyu especially, like a lot of it is less about flavor and more about texture. Yeah. And that real sort of butteriness, the way it melts, the way it
creamy.
chews, and it's so it's really just about how it feels in your mouth as opposed to just flavor overall.
Yeah, I like that. We constantly have a discussion about quality because I think sometimes in the Wagyu world, I think that a lot of people are going for the most marbling.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what is quality beef? Is it just marbling? Is it tenderness? Is it flavor? Because if it's super marbled and doesn't have flavor, it doesn't matter. So I think, bringing back the conversation of, what is quality? What does it mean to you? And there is a spectrum. It doesn't have to be totally marbled. You can concentrate on flavor. You can concentrate on some of those, tenderness things and those different things that really bring out what a great steak eating experience is. So, what is the perfect steak eating experience for you?
I mean, I don't think there's a perfect one. It really depends what I'm in the mood for.
I love that.
I would say that the steak that I would crave most often, like if I'm like, I'm in the mood for a steak, which happens maybe like once a month or so, would be just a really like a prime, not crazy marble, but a prime, really nicely aged ribeye. Like to me, that's the steak experience I want more often than not.
We can dine together.
Get bread. Yeah, man.
That's my jam too.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. That's awesome. Well, did we miss anything, Chef Tyler?
I don't think so. This was great.
About Wagyu?
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, wow. Kenji, this has been so awesome, man. We really appreciate your time and coming out and hanging out with us here.
I appreciate the burger and conversation.
All the way over here to West Seattle.
Cold, and I feel like it's colder and wetter in West Seattle.
I think it is. I think it is.
You cross that bridge and it's like, wait, what the heck happened, man? Oh, dude. Well, yeah, this is cool, and we're glad you made it out here, and we've wanted you to come out for a while, man. We're lucky to have you.
And I'll have to come back and try the rest of the menu at some point.
Yeah. You're going to bologna sandwich now, don't you?
I know, I can't do a bologna sandwich right now. No way.
Right now? Yeah, absolutely not, man. I think I'm good for a little bit.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Is it like a slab of bologna?
It's a whole smoked chub, 5-pound chub, and then we slice it.
It's sliced, so it's
Yeah, so it's not like the.
Got it. And then you pan sear it, or you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you slit it so you get like the Pac-Man?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So good. I do like a bologna sandwich, but not now.
Yeah.
Slice it, slit it like 5 times, rub it with yellow mustard, and then I put this what I call the sweet smoke rub on there.
Okay.
Smoke it, get a good crust on it.
Yeah.
Cool it, slice it, sear it to order.
That sounds great.
spicy yellow mustard.
Yeah, it's pretty rocking.
Little cabbage, coleslaw kind of deal.
Well, my friends and I have a plan. We've been meaning to go bowling for a little while, so we'll
nice.
go bowling, then stop by here next time.
Perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Let us know.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, thanks for teaching us everything about how a steak cooks and giving us your perspective and opinion on Wagyu beef, man. This has been really, really great. We really appreciate, we value your opinion, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear this.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
No,
All right,
thanks,
man.
Ken. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.